The silver ships appeared without warning above Earth's pale blue surface. They came in formations that stretched across the sky like mechanical clouds, blocking out the sun over 3 continents. Humanity looked up and saw the end of their peaceful expansion among the stars. Admiral Sarah Kovac stood in the United Colonial Government Command Center, watching the alien vessels take position around Earth. Her hands pressed flat against the tactical display table, fingers trembling slightly. She had spent 30 years in space defense, fought pirates, stopped corporate wars, and helped establish colonies on 12 worlds. Nothing prepared her for this. The aliens called themselves the Hegemony, 7 species working together under one banner. They had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 10,000 years, or so their translation programs claimed. Every species they encountered either joined them as vassals or disappeared from history. They did not negotiate. They did not compromise. Their representative appeared on every screen across Earth and the colonies. The being stood tall with smooth gray skin and 4 arms folded across its chest. Its face held no expression humans could read. When it spoke, the words came through in perfect English, translated by technology far beyond human understanding. Humanity, you will submit to hegemony authority. You will provide 80% of your resources to our administration. You will accept genetic modification to improve your compliance. You will serve. This is not negotiation. This is instruction. You have 30 days to kneel. The transmission ended. Earth fell silent for exactly 7 seconds. Then the screaming started. Ambassador Kwame Osi rushed through the command center toward Admiral Kovac. His diplomatic robes hung loose on his thin frame. He had spent the last decade building peaceful relations with the few alien species humanity had encountered. Traders mostly. Curious scientists. Small civilizations that posed no threat. The hegemony was different. We need to respond carefully, Osei said. Show them we're reasonable people. Explain our position. Request a meeting to discuss terms. Kovac looked at him with tired eyes. They just demanded we genetically alter ourselves into slaves, Kwame. What terms do you think we can discuss? Any terms are better than war against an empire that old and that large. We need time, information, understanding. Then buy us that time. I'll prepare for the worst. Osei worked for 3 days without sleep. He crafted messages that showed human culture, values, and peaceful intent. He requested formal negotiations. He offered resource-sharing agreements that would cost humanity dearly, but might satisfy the hegemony's demands without surrender. He used every diplomatic technique learned across 40 years of service. The hegemony did not respond to any message. They sent their answer in fire instead. Mars had been humanity's greatest achievement. 3 generations of work transformed the red planet into a world where children could run through forests under a breathable sky. 50,000 people called it home. They built cities into canyon walls and grew food in valleys that once held only dust and stone. The hegemony fleet arrived at Mars on day 7. They positioned themselves in orbit and began firing. The weapons turned the sky orange. The terraforming equipment melted first, destroyed in minutes. Then the cities burned. The hegemony ships worked methodically, destroying every structure, every power plant, every hope. Sarah Kovac watched from Earth as Mars died. She watched until the orbital feeds went dark. Her daughter lived in the northern settlement. Lived. Past tense now, 23 years old. She wanted to be a botanist. She sent her mother pictures of the new trees growing in recycled Martian soil. The command center stayed quiet while Mars burned. Officers sat at their stations with tears running down their faces. Some prayed. Some swore revenge. Some just stared at blank screens. The hegemony broadcast another message. The same gray-skinned being appeared, showing no emotion. This is the cost of considering refusal. Submit now or every human world will share this fate. You have 23 days remaining. The United Colonial Government met in emergency session. Representatives from all 12 colonies argued through the night. Some wanted immediate surrender. The cost of resistance seemed impossible to bear. Others demanded war, regardless of the odds. Most sat somewhere in the middle, paralyzed by fear and rage. Dr. James Chen attended that meeting. He looked like a typical scientist with messy hair and unfashionable clothes. Most representatives did not know his name. The few who did wished they could forget it. Chen worked at a black site research facility doing theoretical weapons research. The kind of research with warning labels and ethics committees specifically created to stop it. I have something that might help. Chen said quietly when the arguing paused. Project Hellfire. We've been working on quantum cascade devices. In theory, they can destabilize a star's fusion process, make it expand rapidly, destroy everything in the system. The chamber fell silent. A representative from Europa Colony spoke first. You're talking about weapons that can kill stars? That's insane. That's genocide on a system-wide scale. Yes, Chen agreed. It's terrible. It's also the only weapon we have that might make the Hegemony think twice. They're 10,000 years old. They have technology we can't match. We can't beat them in conventional warfare. But if they know we can destroy their worlds just as easily as they destroy ours, maybe they'll leave us alone. Or maybe they'll decide we're too dangerous to live, Osei said. Show them weapons like that and they'll exterminate us completely. Chen nodded. That's possible. But they're going to exterminate us anyway if we kneel. You've read the requirements. Genetic modification for compliance. Resource extraction of 80% of everything we produce. We'll be slaves for generations until we forget we were ever free. Is that survival? Or is it just a slower death? The debate raged for hours. In the end, the vote was close. Project Hellfire received authorization. So did Admiral Kovach's military preparations. So did Ambassador Osei's final attempt at negotiations. On day 15, the Hegemony representative agreed to one meeting. Osei traveled alone to the flagship, hoping that face-to-face diplomacy might accomplish what messages could not. He returned 6 hours later. His robes were torn. His face was bruised. He walked slowly to the podium where humanity's leaders waited for his report. They laughed, Osei said simply. I explained our position, offered compromises, showed them our history of peaceful cooperation with other species. The representative, a creature named Zethara, listened politely. Then it laughed. It said every species tries negotiation. Every species thinks they're special. Every species eventually kneels or dies. They've seen it 1,000 times. We're nothing new. Nothing interesting. Just another primitive species that needs to learn its place. Osei's hands shook as he gripped the podium. Zethara told me something else. The Mars attack? That was their standard procedure. They always destroy something important first. It makes the others more cooperative, more willing to submit. 50,000 people died as a lesson in obedience. He looked up at Admiral Kovach. Their eyes met across the chamber. Kovach stood slowly. She wore her full dress uniform, every medal earned across 3 decades of service. Her voice came out steady and cold. Ambassador Osei has served humanity with honor and dedication. He tried every possible path to peace. The Hegemony has rejected all of them. They want us on our knees. They've never seen humanity stand up. She turned to address the full assembly. I'm activating all military reserves. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. We're evacuating civilians to hidden installations and fortifying our positions. Dr. Chen's project moves to full production. In 23 days, when their deadline arrives, we're going to give the Hegemony an answer they'll never forget. And that answer is? Someone asked from the back. Kovach's smile held no warmth. They can kneel to us or they can burn. Let's see how the Hegemony likes those choices. The command center exploded into activity. Officers rushed to their stations. Messages flashed to all 12 colonies. Humanity's age of peace ended on that day. The age of fire was beginning. Across Earth, across the colonies, in the hidden stations and military bases, people watched the announcement. Some cried, some celebrated, some simply held their loved ones close and waited for what came next. On the Hegemony flagship, Council Prime Zethara received reports of humanity's military mobilization. It reviewed the data with its usual calm efficiency. Humans were preparing to fight. How predictable, how pointless. In 10,000 years, the Hegemony never lost. These primitive creatures would learn that lesson soon enough. Zethara ordered the fleet to hold position. Let the humans waste their energy on preparations. Let them build their defenses. In the end, all species learned to kneel. These would be no different. But deep in the Black Site facility, Dr. Chen ran final tests on the first Hellfire device. The star destabilizer glowed with captured quantum reactions. It represented the most dangerous weapon humanity ever created. Chen looked at his creation and wondered if future historians would call him a savior or a monster. Perhaps both. Perhaps it didn't matter anymore. The countdown to the deadline continued. 23 days until the Hegemony expected humanity's answer. 23 days to prepare for war against an empire that never lost. Operation Prometheus began in silence. No dramatic announcements. No grand speeches. Just millions of humans across dozens of installations moving with quiet, desperate purpose. Sarah watched from Defense Station Alpha as the first wave of evacuations began. Civilian transports lifted off from Earth, heading toward hidden facilities in the outer system. Children, elderly, anyone who couldn't fight. They were being moved to places the Hegemony didn't know about yet. Deep asteroid bunkers, stations hidden in the rings of Saturn, secret bases on moons that had never appeared on any official survey. It wouldn't save everyone. There wasn't time. But it might save some. "Admiral, the Hegemony is hailing us," Lieutenant Chen reported. Sarah straightened. On screen, Zathara appeared, and this time the alien looked genuinely curious. "We observe unusual activity throughout your system. You are moving your civilian population. Why? You have already refused our terms. Their deaths are certain. Humans protect their young, Zathara, even when there's no hope." "Especially then," the alien tilted its head. "Fascinating. Your species chooses to expend resources on a futile gesture. This emotional irrationality is precisely why you require our guidance." "You keep calling us irrational," Sarah said, "but you're the ones who murdered 50,000 people just to prove a point. You're the ones who refuse to negotiate, who see compromise as weakness. Maybe we're not the irrational ones here." Zathara made a sound that might have been laughter. "You dare lecture us? We have brought order to 143 species. We have ruled the galaxy for 10 millennia. What have you accomplished in your brief existence? You've barely left your own star system." "We've survived," Sarah replied quietly, "against everything the universe threw at us. Ice ages, plagues, wars, we kept going. We kept fighting. And we're still here. Not for much longer." The alien's eyes held something that might have been pity. "You could have had a place in the galaxy, human. Your species shows potential. Under proper guidance, you might have become useful. But you chose pride over survival. That was your fatal mistake." "No," Sarah said. "Our fatal mistake would have been kneeling. At least this way we die standing." The transmission ended. Dr. Chen worked around the clock in his hidden laboratory, preparing the Hellfire devices. Sarah visited him on the second day of preparations. She found him staring at a holographic display showing 7 different star systems. "The core worlds of the Hegemony. Having second thoughts?" Sarah asked. Chen didn't turn around. "I'm having all the thoughts, Admiral. About what we're about to do. About the lives we'll end. About the civilizations we'll destroy." He finally looked at her. "Do you know how many beings live in the Corthane home system alone? 32 billion. And that's just one of 7 core worlds." Sarah felt the weight of those numbers. 32 billion. More than the entire human population throughout history. And they were planning to kill them all. "What choice do we have?" she asked. "None. That's what keeps me awake at night. They gave us no choice. They came with threats and ultimatums and murder. They proved they'd kill us without hesitation. So we have to strike first or we die." Chen's hands shook slightly, "But I keep thinking about those 32 billion individuals. People with families, dreams, lives, and we're going to erase them all." Sarah stood beside him looking at the display. "What if we gave them warning? Told them to evacuate? You mean give up our only advantage? Let them know what we can do?" Chen shook his head. "They just kill us faster. Maybe, but at least we'd know we tried. At least we'd be better than them." Sarah met his eyes. "Can you set the devices on a timer? Give them 48 hours to evacuate?" Chen thought about it. "It's risky, but yes. I can do that, then do it. If we're going to destroy entire civilizations, we're at least going to give them a chance to run." While Chen worked on the Hellfire devices, the rest of humanity prepared for conventional war. Every ship that could carry a weapon was armed. Civilian vessels were converted into missile platforms. Mining equipment became improvised bombs. Construction equipment was repurposed for military use. Captain Maria Torres commanded a small cargo hauler called the Lucky Star. Before the crisis, she'd spent her days moving supplies between Earth and the Belt. Now she stood in her ship's cargo bay, watching engineers weld antimatter containment units to the hull. "Captain, you understand what we're asking?" the chief engineer said quietly. Maria nodded. The plan was simple and brutal. The Lucky Star would fly straight at a Hegemony warship at maximum speed. At the last moment, Maria would trigger the antimatter release. The explosion would be big enough to take out anything nearby. It was a suicide run. "Everyone knew it, I understand," Maria said. How many other ships are being converted like this? About 300 ships. 300 volunteer crews, all preparing to die. They must think we're crazy, Maria said. The engineer smiled grimly. They don't understand humans. They think we're ruled by logic. By self-preservation? They don't get that sometimes we value other things more than our own lives. Like what? Maria asked. Like making sure our children have a chance. Like refusing to kneel. Like showing the universe that humanity doesn't go quietly. The Hegemony's first mistake was treating humanity like every other species they'd conquered. They expected panic, chaos, desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, they got organized resistance. The second mistake was underestimating human creativity when it came to violence. Humanity had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. Every war, every conflict, every battlefield had taught hard lessons. Now all that knowledge was being turned outward. Asteroid miners showed the military how to launch rocks at near-light speed. Construction workers demonstrated how to turn ordinary tools into deadly traps. Civilian engineers figured out how to hack hegemony communications. Scientists created biological weapons tailored to alien biology. None of it would be enough to win, but it might be enough to make the hegemony bleed. On day 3 of the preparation, Ambassador Osei met with Sarah in her office. He looked exhausted. He'd spent the past 72 hours trying to establish contact with other hegemony species, trying to find anyone who might be willing to listen. Any luck? Sarah asked. Osei sank into a chair. Maybe. I've been analyzing the hegemony's communication patterns. They're not as unified as they pretend. There are 7 species in the coalition, and not all of them seem happy about this war. Explain. The Korthine are the dominant species. Sethara's people, they're the ones pushing for extermination. But 3 other species have been sending us diplomatic signals, subtle ones, suggesting they might be open to negotiation if we can prove we're worth talking to. Sarah leaned forward. What kind of signals? Small things. Delays in military response. Communications that use less aggressive language. One species, the Valax, even sent us information about hegemony fleet movements. They claimed it was an accidental transmission, but I don't believe in those kinds of accidents. So the hegemony isn't as united as they want us to think. No. Which means if we can survive the first assault, if we can prove we're strong enough to be dangerous, we might be able to split them apart. Osei smiled tiredly. It's a long shot, but it's something. Sarah thought about the Hellfire devices, about the 32 billion Korthan who might die, about the chance, however small, to end this without total destruction. Keep trying, she said. We need every ally we can get. The hegemony's assault began exactly on schedule. 6 hours after humanity's refusal, their fleet moved into Earth orbit. Hundreds of ships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity could field. The first shots were fired by orbital defense stations. Human missiles streaked toward the alien vessels. Most were destroyed by point defense systems. A few got through, leaving scorched marks on armor but causing no real damage. Then the hegemony returned fire. Sarah watched as orbital station after station went silent. The aliens were methodical, efficient, and utterly ruthless. They didn't negotiate, didn't offer terms, just systematically destroyed everything that posed a threat. Launch the volunteer ships, Sarah ordered. 300 ships accelerated toward the hegemony fleet, small vessels against massive warships, moths throwing themselves into flames. Captain Maria Torres felt strangely calm as she pushed the Lucky Star to maximum velocity. Around her, other volunteer ships did the same. They weren't trying to dodge, weren't trying to survive, just trying to reach their targets. The hegemony fleet opened fire. Torres watched ships around her explode. Good people, brave people, all dying for a chance to hurt the enemy. Then she was through the defensive fire, racing toward a massive hegemony dreadnought. Her hand hovered over the antimatter release. She thought about her son, safe in an asteroid bunker. About the world she wanted him to grow up in. About the price of freedom. Torres triggered the release. The explosion was visible from Earth. A new star blooming in orbit, bright enough to be seen in daylight. When it faded, the dreadnought was gone. So was the Lucky Star. Across the battlefield, similar explosions lit up the void. 300 ships, 300 sacrifices. And when it was over, the hegemony had lost 47 vessels. It was the most casualties they'd suffered in a single engagement in over a century. The evacuation of the first hegemony world began within hours of humanity's demonstration. Ships poured out of the dying system, carrying frightened civilians who had thought themselves untouchable. They learned otherwise. Sarah watched the exodus through long-range sensors, millions of beings fleeing their homes. It should have made her feel guilty. Instead, she felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Now they knew. Now they understood what it meant to lose everything. Admiral Ambassador Osei is reporting something unusual, Lieutenant Chen said. 3 hegemony species have opened private communication channels. They're requesting negotiations. Sarah's attention sharpened. Which 3? The Velax, the Threnody, and the Makara. All of them are offering ceasefire terms. They want us to deactivate the Hellfire devices in exchange for immediate withdrawal from human space. And the Korthane? Silent. But their military movement suggests they're preparing for escalation, not withdrawal. Sarah pulled up tactical displays. The hegemony was fracturing exactly as Osei had predicted. But the Korthane, the dominant species, were refusing to back down. That complicated everything. She called an emergency meeting with Osei and Chen. They gathered in a secure room, away from the chaos of the command center. Talk to me about these 3 species, Sarah said. Osei brought up information files. The Velax are traitors. They joined the hegemony for economic protection, not conquest. The Threnody are scientists and explorers. They never wanted war. The Makara are warriors, but they value honor. They're troubled by the Korthane's methods. So they're not ideologically committed to the hegemony's mission, Chen observed. No. They're subject peoples who've been forced into the coalition over centuries, some willingly, some not. But they all answer to the Korthane. And the Korthane are absolute in their belief that they should rule the galaxy. Sarah thought about it. So if we can separate the Korthane from the others, we might end this without destroying 7 civilizations. Maybe, Osei said carefully. But the Korthane won't negotiate. They view compromise as weakness. They'd rather die than admit humans might be their equals. Then we give them a choice, Sarah said. Die alone or watch their allies abandon them. The next phase of the war began with words, not weapons. Ambassador Osei opened negotiations with the 3 dissenting species. His message was simple and brutal. We don't want to destroy your worlds. We don't want to kill billions of innocent beings. But we will if we have to. The Korthane forced this war. They demanded we surrender our freedom. We refused. Now you have a choice. Help us end this or die with them. The Velax were the first to respond. Their ambassador appeared on the screen. A tall being with silver skin and multiple eyes. It spoke in a musical language that translated as careful diplomacy. We understand your position, humans. The Korthane have ruled us for 3,000 years. They do not tolerate dissent. But perhaps there is another way. If we were to withdraw our forces from your space, if we were to refuse further participation in this war, would you spare our worlds? Osei consulted with Sarah before responding. She thought about it carefully. They needed allies. They needed the hegemony divided, but they also needed to maintain their position of strength. Yes, Osei said finally. Withdraw your forces. Refuse to fight us. Help evacuate the Korthane worlds we've targeted. Do these things, and we'll deactivate the Hellfire devices aimed at your systems. The Velax ambassador showed something that might have been relief. And the Korthane? What will you do to them? That depends on them. If they withdraw and leave us alone, we'll do the same. If they continue to attack us, we'll defend ourselves, with everything we have. The Threnody and Makara soon followed the Velax example. Within 48 hours, 3 of the 7 hegemony species had withdrawn from the war. Their fleets pulled back from human space. Their governments issued statements claiming they had never supported the Korthane aggression. The remaining 4 species stayed loyal to the Korthane. But the fractures were showing. The mighty hegemony that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years was breaking apart. Zathara watched the defections with growing fury. The Velax, the Threnody, the Makara, all of them running like cowards, all of them betraying millennia of order for a chance to save their miserable lives. Council Prime, our strategic position is deteriorating, the military coordinator reported. We've lost 30% of our fleet strength. 3 allied species have withdrawn support, and the humans continue to resist. Recommend immediate withdrawal to regroup, another officer suggested. Zathara's hand slammed down on the console. No, we do not retreat from primitives. We do not negotiate with insects. The Korthane have ruled this galaxy since before these humans crawled out of their caves. We will not be humiliated by them now. But Council Prime, they have weapons that can destroy our worlds. If we continue, then we die with honor. Zethara roared. Better extinction than submission. Better death than acknowledging we might be wrong. Deploy the full fleet. Destroy Earth. Kill every human you can find. Show the galaxy what happens to those who defy us. The orders went out. The Corthane and their remaining allies gathered every ship they could spare. They would make one final overwhelming assault on Earth. They would break humanity once and for all, even if it cost them everything. Sarah saw the Corthine fleet gathering, hundreds of ships, maybe thousands, all converging on Earth. It was more firepower than the defense forces could possibly handle. They're going to try to end this quickly, she said to her staff. One massive strike to destroy Earth and break our will to fight. Can we stop them? Lieutenant Chen asked. No, not conventionally. But we don't have to stop them. We just have to make them regret trying. Sarah pulled up displays showing the Corthane home systems. Dr. Chen, are the Hellfire devices in position? Chen's voice came through the comm. Yes, Admiral. 7 devices, 7 Corthine core worlds, all on standby. Activate the evacuation protocols. Give them 72 hours this time. I want every Corthane civilian who wants to live to have a chance to get out. And if they refuse to evacuate, Sarah's voice was cold, then they die. But it will be their choice, not ours. The message went out to all 7 Corthine worlds simultaneously. Billions of beings received the same warning. Your leaders have chosen war. We have deployed weapons that will destroy your stars. You have 72 hours to evacuate. We take no pleasure in this. We wish there had been another way. But your government gave us no choice. Save yourselves, while you still can. The Corthane response was immediate and predictable. Their government declared the warning a bluff. They ordered their citizens to remain calm. They promised that the Corthine military would protect them, but not all Corthane believed them. Some remembered the demonstration. Some understood that humanity wasn't bluffing. They began to evacuate on their own, defying their government's orders. The Corthine leadership declared these evacuees traitors, cowards, weaklings who didn't deserve to be called Corthane. But the evacuations continued. Millions at first, then tens of millions, people who valued their lives more than their government's pride. Zethara watched the exodus with disgust, the weak fleeing, the fearful abandoning their posts. It was shameful, humiliating, a betrayal of everything the Corthane stood for. But Zethara wouldn't run, wouldn't compromise. The Council Prime stood on the bridge of the flagship and gave the order to attack Earth. All ships, maximum speed. Destroy the human homeworld. Show them what happens when primitives challenge their betters. The Corthine fleet surged forward, but they had made a critical mistake. They had assumed the defecting species would remain neutral. They hadn't considered that the Valax, Threnody, and Makara might actively help humanity. As the Corthane fleet approached Earth, they found their path blocked. Not by human ships, but by their former allies. The 3 defecting species had positioned their fleets between the Corthane and Earth. Council Prime. The Valax are hailing us, a communications officer reported. The Valax ambassador appeared on screen. We cannot allow you to attack Earth, Zethara. We will not be party to genocide. Stand down. Zethara stared in disbelief. You dare oppose us? We made you what you are. Without the Corthane, you would be nothing. You made us afraid, the Valax replied. You made us obedient. You made us complicit in your crimes. But the humans showed us something. They showed us that it's possible to say no, to stand up to bullies, even when the odds are impossible. The ambassador's multiple eyes fixed on Zethara. We're saying no now. Turn back. Zethara cut the transmission. All ships engage. Destroy anything that stands in our way. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in millennia. Former allies fighting each other, the hegemony tearing itself apart, and at the center of it all, Earth, the planet that had refused to kneel. Sarah coordinated the defense from Defense Station Alpha. Human ships fought alongside Valax vessels. Threnody technology enhanced human weapons. Makara warriors taught human soldiers new tactics. It was still a desperate fight. The Corthane had numbers and technology, but they no longer had unity. And without unity, their overwhelming power became manageable. The battle raged for 12 hours. Ships exploded. Stations burned. Thousands died on all sides. But slowly, inexorably, the Corthane advance stalled. The dust took weeks to settle, Not physical dust, but the metaphorical kind. The kind that comes after empires fall and the galaxy changes forever. Dr. James Chen stood in what remained of his laboratory, staring at blank screens. The Hellfire devices were gone, destroyed, used up in the final act of humanity's desperate war. 7 Corthine stars had died. Billions of beings with them. He couldn't stop thinking about them. The ones who had refused to evacuate. The ones who had believed their government's lies. The ones who had simply been too proud or too stubborn to run. Dr. Chen, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Ambassador Osi stood in the doorway, looking as exhausted as Chen felt. Ambassador, Chen acknowledged. I heard about Admiral Kovach, about the station. Ose nodded slowly. She died, taking Zathara with her. The Corthine military leadership is in chaos. Most of their command structure was on that flagship. And the war? Over? The remaining Corthine forces have withdrawn. They're requesting terms, Ose paused. They want to negotiate. Chen laughed, but there was no humor in it. Now they want to negotiate. After everything. After 50,000 dead on Mars, after Admiral Kovach, after 7 stars. Yes, Osi said quietly. Now they understand what humanity is capable of. What we'll do when pushed to the edge. They're afraid. Good, Chen said. They should be. The negotiations took place on neutral ground. A space station operated by the Velax, far from both human and Corthine space. Ambassador Ose led the human delegation. The Corthane sent a new Council Prime, a younger member of their species who had not been part of Zathara's War Council. The new Council Prime was called Kethva. Unlike Zathara, this one seemed capable of listening, of understanding that the old order had died with those 7 stars. Ambassador Ose, Kethva began, the Corthane people acknowledge that we misjudged your species. We treated you as primitives when you were not. We demanded submission when we should have offered partnership. We were wrong. The words clearly cost the alien. The Corthane had never admitted to being wrong about anything. Not in 10,000 years, Ose let the silence stretch. He wanted the Corthane to feel the weight of that admission, to understand what it meant. We seek peace, Kethva continued, an end to hostilities, withdrawal of all forces from human space, recognition of your sovereignty, and in exchange, Ose asked, you deactivate any remaining weapons capable of destroying our worlds. You agree not to use such weapons again without provocation. You allow us to survive. Ose looked at the Corthine representative. He thought about Admiral Kovach, about Elena and the 50,000 on Mars, about Captain Torres and the 300 volunteers, about everyone who had died because the Corthine thought humans should kneel. We will agree to your terms, Ose said slowly, with additions. The hegemony as you knew it is over. The Corthane will not rule other species anymore. Each civilization that was part of your empire will be free to choose its own path, trade with us, alliance with us, or simply to be left alone, whatever they want. Kethva's expression was difficult to read. You ask us to give up 10,000 years of order. I'm asking you to give up 10,000 years of tyranny, Ose corrected. Your empire was built on fear and force. It's time to try something else. Partnership, cooperation, respect for other species' right to exist on their own terms. The Corthane was quiet for a long moment. Then it nodded slowly. The Corthane accept these terms. We will withdraw. We will release our subject species. We will learn to live differently. Good, Ose said, because humanity has learned something too. We've learned that we're not alone in the galaxy, that there are other species out there, some hostile, some friendly, and we've learned that we're capable of terrible things when we're pushed too far. He leaned forward. Don't ever push us that far again. The peace treaty was signed 3 weeks later. The hegemony officially dissolved. 7 species that had been subject to Corthane rule for centuries declared independence. Some formed alliances with humanity. Some chose neutrality. A few wanted nothing to do with anyone and isolated themselves. The Corthine, diminished but not destroyed, withdrew to their remaining worlds. They still existed, still had power, but they would never again dominate the galaxy. But the war's cost became clearer as the days passed. Earth had survived, but barely. Orbital infrastructure was in ruins. The moon's facilities were damaged. Mars remained dead, a monument to the hegemony's cruelty. 2 billion humans had died, 50 billion Corthane, countless others from the species that had been caught in the crossfire. Dr. Chen found himself summoned to Earth for what he assumed would be a ceremony, awards, recognition, the kind of thing governments did after wars. Instead, he was led into a courtroom. The trial began 3 months after the war ended. War crimes tribunals, they called them. Humanity's leaders had decided that even in war, some lines couldn't be crossed without consequences. That victory didn't excuse everything. Chen sat in the defendant's chair, listening as prosecutors detailed his crimes. The creation of weapons of mass destruction, the destruction of 7 inhabited star systems, the deaths of billions of sentient beings. He didn't deny any of it. Couldn't deny it. He had done those things, created those weapons, activated those devices, killed those billions. Dr. Chen, the judge asked, "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Chen stood slowly. "What I did was terrible, unforgivable. I killed billions of beings who had never personally threatened humanity. Innocent people, children, families, I destroyed them all." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "But I would do it again." The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order. "Not because I wanted to," Chen continued. "Not because I enjoyed it, but because the alternative was humanity's extinction. The Corthane gave us no choice. They came with ultimatums and murder. They proved they would kill us without hesitation. So yes, I created the weapons. I used them. I would use them again if humanity's survival depended on it." He met the judge's eyes. "But I will carry the weight of those deaths for the rest of my life." Every single one. The trial lasted 6 weeks. In the end, Chen was convicted. Guilty of crimes against sentient beings. Guilty of using weapons of mass destruction. Guilty of actions that resulted in the deaths of billions. But the sentence was suspended. The judges acknowledged that Chen had acted under extreme circumstances, that his actions, while terrible, had saved humanity from extinction. That war created impossible choices. He was released with a warning. If he ever created such weapons again, if he ever used such methods again outside of a direct existential threat, the full sentence would be imposed. Chen accepted the terms. He destroyed all remaining Hellfire research, erased the data, made sure no one could ever recreate his work. Then he began a different kind of work, trying to repair some of the damage he had caused, working with Valek scientists to stabilize the dying stars before they went fully nova. It was too late for the Corthane worlds, but maybe they could save others who had been caught in the blast zones. The galaxy began to rebuild, slowly, painfully. The former Hegemony species formed a new organization, the Galactic Council for Reconciliation, a deliberate contrast to the old Hegemony. This one would be based on cooperation, not domination. Ambassador Osei became humanity's first representative to the Council. He sat in meetings with beings who had been humanity's enemies just months before. Some still viewed humans with suspicion, others with respect, a few with outright fear. All of them understood one fundamental truth. Humanity could not be pushed around, could not be bullied, could not be forced to kneel. One day, a Corthine approached Osei after a council meeting. It was young, barely an adult by their standards. It had lost family in the supernovas. "Ambassador," the young Corthine said, "I wanted to ask you something." "Go ahead," Osei replied carefully. "Do you regret it? What your species did to ours?" Osei thought carefully before answering. "Every day, every single day I think about the beings who died, who lost their homes, their families, their futures. It was a terrible thing. Unforgivable, really. Then why did you do it?" "Because your leaders left us no choice. They came with ultimatums, demands, murder. They proved they would destroy us if we didn't submit. So we had to show them we would destroy them first." Osei paused. "War is not about good and evil. It's about survival. Your government threatened our existence. We defended ourselves. That's all." The young Corthane was quiet for a moment. "I understand. I don't like it. But I understand." It hesitated. Would your people do it again? If threatened?" Without hesitation, Osei said. "That's the lesson here. Humanity will negotiate. We'll cooperate. We'll be your friend and ally. But push us to the edge. Threaten our existence, and we will do whatever it takes to survive. Even terrible things." The young Corthane nodded slowly. "Then we must never push you to that edge again." "That would be wise," Osei agreed. Back on Earth, reconstruction continued. The planet's scars would take decades to heal, but they were healing. Slowly, new stations were being built, new ships launched, new colonies established. On Mars, a memorial was constructed. 50,000 names carved into stone. Among them was Elena Kovac. Her mother's name was added later alongside the 300 volunteers and all the others who had died defending humanity. 5 years after the war, humanity celebrated a milestone, the first child born in the newly rebuilt Mars colony. They named her Hope. Dr. James Chen attended the naming ceremony. He was older now. Gray hair turned white, shoulders slightly bent. The weight of billions of deaths had aged him in ways that time alone could not. But he smiled as he watched the parents hold their daughter. New life on a world that had been dead twice. First by nature, then by war. Now it was alive again, growing again, hoping again. She's beautiful, Chen said to the parents. The mother, a young woman named Sarah after the late admiral, smiled. We wanted to give her a name that meant something, that reminded us why we fought. Hope is a good name, Chen agreed, better than the ones we gave our weapons. He spent the rest of the day at the memorial, reading the names. Elena Kovac was near the top. Admiral Sarah Kovac just below. 50,000 names total. 50,000 reasons why humanity had fought. A shadow fell across him. Chen looked up to find a Corthane standing there. Not old, not young. Somewhere in between. It carried flowers, which was unusual. The Corthine didn't traditionally honor the dead with plants. Dr. Chen, the Corthine said, I am Vethkan. I lost family in the war, both to your weapons and to my own government's pride. Chen tensed slightly. He still didn't know how to react when he met Corthane survivors, the ones who had lost everything because of his creations. I'm sorry, Chen said. It was inadequate, but it was all he had. Vethkan placed the flowers at the base of the memorial. I came to understand, to see what humanity built from the ashes, to learn why you fought so hard. And what did you learn? Chen asked. That love is stronger than hate, that protecting your children matters more than pride, that sometimes the monsters are the ones who tried to make others kneel. The Corthine looked at Chen. I'm not here to forgive you. I don't have that right. My family died because of your weapons, but they also died because my government refused to listen, refused to negotiate, refused to see humans as equals. Both things can be true, Chen said quietly. Yes, both things are true, and we all have to live with that. Vethkan gestured to the memorial. Is this why? Is this what you are protecting? Chen nodded. These people, and all the others. Everyone who might have been born but wouldn't have been if we'd given in. Every future that would have been erased. Every dream that would have died. Yes, this is why. Vethkan was quiet for a long moment. I understand. I don't like it. But I understand. The Corthine turned to leave, then paused. Dr. Chen, my government is planning a memorial on one of our surviving worlds. For those who died in the war, all of them. Corthine, human, everyone. Would you come? Help us remember them properly? Chen felt tears forming. After everything. After all the death and destruction. They wanted him to help them remember. To honor the dead on both sides, yes, he said. I'll come. Ambassador Osei had aged too, though perhaps less visibly than Chen. He still worked at the Galactic Council, still represented humanity's interests. But his focus had shifted. Less on military matters, more on building connections, creating partnerships, ensuring that war never happened again. The council chambers had changed since the Hegemony's fall. Now there were representatives from 14 species, each with equal votes, each with equal voice. No one dominated. No one ruled. It was messy and inefficient and beautiful. Today's session was about trade agreements, boring, technical, detailed. Exactly the kind of thing that built peace. War started with grand gestures and ultimatums. Peace was built with boring meetings about tariffs and shipping routes. After the session, a Velax approached Osei. This one was young, barely into adulthood by their species standards. Ambassador Osei, I wanted to thank you. Osei smiled. For what? For teaching the galaxy that saying no is possible. That defiance isn't suicide. That standing up for yourself matters. The young Velax gestured around the chamber. My species spent 3,000 years being ruled by the Corthine. We never thought we could be free. Then you showed us. You refused to kneel, and somehow you survived. That changed everything. We almost didn't survive, Osei pointed out. It was close. Very close, but you did. And that matters. It matters that someone finally said no and lived to tell about it. It gave the rest of us courage. The Valax paused. Though I hope we never have to do what you did. The cost was terrible. Yes, Osei agreed. The cost was terrible. That's why we work so hard now to make sure it never happens again. Why we negotiate. Why we compromise. Why we talk through our differences instead of fighting over them. Do you think it will work? The young Valax asked. Can species really live together in peace? Osei looked around the chamber. At beings from 14 different worlds. Different biologies. Different cultures. Different histories. All sitting together, working together, trying to build something better than what came before. I don't know, Osei admitted, but we have to try, because the alternative is more war, more death, more worlds turned to dust. And I've seen enough dust to last a lifetime. Earth continued to heal. The scars from orbital bombardment faded slowly. New cities rose where old ones had burned. New forests grew where fires had raged. Life as it always did found a way, but humanity was different now. Changed by what they'd experienced. They'd learned they weren't alone in the universe, that there were species out there who would kill them without hesitation, but also species who would stand with them, who valued the same things. They'd learned they were capable of terrible things. That pushed to the edge, they would do whatever it took to survive. That knowledge was frightening, but also necessary. Most importantly, they'd learned that they could not be broken, could not be forced to surrender who they were, that humanity would rather die free than live as slaves. In schools across human space, children learned about the war, about Admiral Kovach and the 300 volunteers, about Dr. Chen and the impossible choice he'd made, about Ambassador Osei and the peace he'd built from the ashes. They learned that war was not glorious, that victory came with terrible costs, that sometimes there were no good choices, only less terrible ones. But they also learned that some things were worth fighting for, that freedom mattered, that dignity mattered, that the right to exist on your own terms mattered. 10 years after the war, the Galactic Council established a new holiday, a day of remembrance for all those who had died in the conflict. Human and alien, military and civilian, everyone who had been caught in the crossfire. The first observance was held on Earth. Representatives from all 14 species came. They stood together at the memorial reading names, honoring the dead, acknowledging the cost of the peace they now enjoyed. Dr. Chen stood with Vethkan, the human who had created weapons of mass destruction, standing beside the Korthine who had lost family to those weapons. They didn't speak, but they stood together, and that meant something. Ambassador Osei gave a speech. He spoke of loss and grief, of mistakes and regrets, of the terrible price of survival, but he also spoke of hope, of new beginnings, of the chance to build something better. We stand here today, Osei said, on ground that was once a battlefield, where humans and Korthane killed each other, where billions died because of pride and fear and the failure to see each other as equals. We cannot change the past, cannot bring back the dead, cannot undo the terrible things we did to each other, but we can learn from them. We can build a future where such choices are never necessary again. Humanity learned hard lessons in this war. We learned what we're capable of when pushed to the edge. We learned that we would rather die than kneel. But we also learned that we don't have to be alone, that there are others who share our values, who will stand with us. To the galaxy, we offer this promise. We will never again be the ones to start a war. We will never again use weapons of mass destruction, except in defense of our survival. We will always seek peace first, negotiation first, understanding first, but we also promise this. We will never kneel. We will never surrender our freedom. We will never accept domination. Push us to the edge and we will defend ourselves with everything we have. That is who humanity is. Warriors when necessary, peacemakers when possible, but always, always free. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence. Beings from 14 worlds stood together honoring the dead, remembering the cost of the peace they enjoyed. Then they returned to their ships, to their worlds, to the work of building a better galaxy. 15 years after the war, something unexpected happened. A Korthane child was orphaned in an accident. Her family was gone. Her clan couldn't take her. She needed a home. A human family on Mars volunteered to adopt her. They'd lost their own daughter in the war. They had room in their hearts for another child, even a Corthane child, even the child of their former enemies. The adoption made news across the galaxy. Some criticized it, called it betrayal. How could humans adopt the child of the species that had tried to destroy them? But the family had an answer. Simple and profound. She's a child. She had nothing to do with the war. She deserves love and safety and a future. That's what we fought for. Not revenge. Not hatred, but the chance for children to grow up in a better galaxy. The girl grew up on Mars, learning about both cultures, human and Corthine,